the idea that the Prince of Wales is telling his wife that he loves her in public, I think a decade ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, it's just not something that would have happened in the royal family. It's a very small thing, but it's a very big thing in terms of the monarchy and how they're moving in the modern world.
I love that she's back. I love that she is going to tell us more. And that Guy video, it just confirms it. She's not going to be afraid of sharing photos of her personal life. She has included her kids in those videos. And I just love that she gets to share that part of her life. So I welcome her.
This whole series of interviews that we saw back in, was it 2022, which was just kind of relentless airing of their grievances about the royal family and their time in the institution. If that now comes to a close because Meghan is teaching us how to scatter petals on donuts and drizzle oil on hummus and chop up carrots, then
that's a good thing.
More power to them.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to the first episode of a Right Road podcast of 2025 with me, Andrea.
And me, Emily.
We hope you all had an amazing break and are feeling good at the start of a new year. We sure are. We couldn't be happier to be back and talking all things royal.
We have so much to catch up on. Royal appearances over the holidays, a gorgeous new portrait of the Princess of Wales as she turns 43, and an incredibly personal message from her proud husband, Prince William.
And of course, we do have to talk about Meghan's big relaunch, 5 years on from her and Prince Harry's departure from royal life.
Yes, there's a new Instagram account, a new TV series, and possibly even her long-awaited product range launching.
There's a lot happening for Harry and Meghan this year. It sounds jam-packed. Right, let's get to it, shall we?
Yes, but before we do, if you'd like to experience the podcast without ads, simply head over to our Royal Club on Substack and sign up. Look out for the details in the description, or if you're watching on YouTube, just click here.
Now, we have a lot to cover with this week's guest, the brilliant Hannah Furness, royal editor at the Daily Telegraph. But before, let's have a little recap of what's been happening.
There has been a lot, but for me, the big moment this week was the Princess of Wales's birthday. She turned 43 on January 9th, and it was different to usual because we were given a beautiful birthday present in the form of a photograph of her and this wonderful message from Prince William. And it's kind of really in keeping with what we've heard from him in recent months, a very emotionally open message, but him calling her the most incredible wife and mother, and talking about her remarkable bravery over the past year. And I think he obviously wanted to take this opportunity to pay a public tribute to her because everyone knows that they've had, in his own words, a brutal time. And I thought that was just a lovely touch.
And we weren't expecting it at all because let's remember, they don't usually, put out a photo.
They don't. Unless it's a milestone.
Yeah, they did put a 40th, I think it was 3 lovely photos of her. So this was quite a surprise, and it's a nice way of keeping her visible whilst she's still not quite back.
Absolutely. And, they know there's a lot of interest, and, it's not like previous years where it's just been another birthday. This is a big deal, and they want to celebrate, and I think it's absolutely right too. It's, nice way to start the year. So more of the same, please, William.
Now, exactly. Yes, please. Now, we saw her at Sandringham. She was on top form then.
She looked really happy to be back, didn't she?
She did what she does best in walkabouts, which is chat, and get, she's left behind, which was quite funny because there's a little video where her kids and her husband are waiting for her. And she's way back down the line, still talking to people, taking photos.
We all know someone like that. Quite often it's me.
Yeah. Now, what were your best moments from the day? Because there were loads. There were absences. There was a debut that we can talk about as well.
Yeah. Look, I think it was just great to see both the King and Kate out. Obviously, a year ago, they had been and no one knew what was around the corner. And after everything they've been through, certainly hearing from some of the people in the crowds down there, they were genuinely delighted that they were going to see Kate in particular, after everything that's happened. She seemed to just be really relishing this moment of being back out in public, shaking hands, accepting gifts, but bringing this kind of new understanding, when people, I think, feel that perhaps they can be more open with her and connect with her even more than they did in the past. And certainly, anyone with experience of cancer is now going to feel like they have that in common with her. So I think that was quite powerful.
Oh, yeah. I think the kids need a mention because let's not forget, they are very young and they handled themselves so well. I mean, Charlotte was being asked to take selfies.
Yeah.
She was being complimented on how gorgeous and beautiful she is. I have young kids. Like, they were just, their behaviour was just impeccable.
Yeah, I'd love to know how they prepared them also for this quite, unusual situation that they're in. Because if it is daunting for them, you don't see it, and they're obviously, William and Kate are obviously doing a brilliant job at making them feel as comfortable as they can in this situation and sort of showing them the ropes. I imagine there were some interesting conversations going on behind the scenes as to how you navigate this. And you can see that with the difference in ages, how much more comfortable the older ones are now. And I mean, Louis is just dazzled by all the gifts, isn't he? He's obviously...
I can imagine this is like the top event in their calendar because they get showered with so many gifts.
Oh, and I have to say, I think this could be a real trigger for some parents because I certainly know, my husband gets really annoyed when people keep giving the kids chocolate.
Yeah, true.
But they do it with the best of intentions. But he's like, no, we just don't keep giving them more. And I get that, but it's not something that William and Kate are going to say, is it? They can't. No one wants to disappoint people in the crowd.
Now let's talk. There were some absences which obviously we knew about. Prince Andrew, Sarah Ferguson, they spent Christmas together at Royal Lodge. Princess Eugenie, who spent Christmas with her in-laws for the first time. Peter Phillips's girlfriend, Harriet, who we know was very busy. She works as a nurse in the NHS.
Yeah.
So that's why she wasn't there. And there was an incredible debut, which was Sam Chatto's girlfriend.
You're absolutely right. This is the artist Eleanor Exerjan. I hope I've pronounced that correctly.
Sounds good to me.
She is Sam Chatto's partner, and I think the fact that she appeared alongside the rest of the family at Sandringham certainly set tongues wagging. This is the kind of thing you see if someone's about to join the royal family, traditionally at least.
Yes.
And it might be different. It might be that King Charles has relaxed the so-called rules around, family gatherings. But certainly under Queen Elizabeth's time in her reign, people coming to Sandringham were usually people who were at least engaged to be married.
So
and Meghan was the first.
And Eduardo was the next, wasn't he?
Absolutely, yeah.
So could we, will there be wedding bells this year?
Well, I think it's one to watch. It's
one to
certainly
watch.
one to watch. But they look very happy together. And just for anyone who's not clear, because obviously there are lots of generations of royals and cousins and distant relatives, but Samuel Chatto's grandmother was Princess Margaret, Queen Elizabeth's sister. His mother is Lady Sarah Chatto, and they are firm fixtures in the King's Christmas gatherings.
Now, also there were the Tindalls.
Yes.
But even though they did attend New Year's Day races at Cheltenham, they then flew to Australia.
Yes, as they have done, I believe, since about 2015. It's a real annual fixture for them, and that's because Zara is an ambassador for the Magic Millions. It's this huge equestrian festival that takes place, and it's something that they clearly really enjoy. And for any couple with young children who are, let's face it, full of beans, we all saw those wonderful pictures of little Lucas, who's 3 now, are going crazy at the races. What a treat to be able to jet off and have a little bit of couple time away.
They're having a great time. They did travel without their kids, obviously, because the kids are back at school. But we've seen pictures of them doing karaoke. They've been doing shopping. They've just been having fun with their usual celebs that actually attend, like actress Elsa Pataki. So they've been very, very busy. There was one accident, though. I don't know if you managed to...
Yes. Oh my goodness, it sort of slightly caught my breath because I wondered, God, are we going to have another Princess Anne moment here? Because obviously she was quite badly injured by a horse not that long ago. But if you see it, there's a moment where a horse that is just behind Zara rears up and sort of knocks her sideways. And she's used to being around horses. But it just goes to show how unpredictable, that world can be.
My God, talking about Princess Anne, can we talk about her being crowned? Obviously.
Yet again,
the hardest working royal of 2024.
I know. Oh my goodness.
I mean, no surprise there. Despite, her being off from work. How long was she off?
She was off for like 2 or 3 weeks
after
her head injury. But I mean, she's just such a stalwart, isn't she? And showing no sign of wanting to slow down anytime soon. And I think, what a role model.
Now, the king follows second, obviously, but there's a surprise number 3. Who is it?
It's the Duke of Gloucester. This was the late Queen's cousin. And he and the Duchess of Gloucester are continuously in the royal diary. They are carrying out engagements. They don't have much of a public profile at all, but very committed to their charities and organisations, and always, carrying out duties on behalf of the king. So, they do play an important role, but it's important to remember the figures were all a bit skewed this year, understandably. And it really is remarkable that the king still came second in a year where he's had weekly cancer treatment. The Queen is, I think, just behind the Duke of Gloucester. And then you have William and Catherine, obviously, not having done anywhere near as much this year. Just, I think, 11 engagements for her, all things considered. She's done very well there. And William, as we know, sort of put the brakes on a little bit last year because he had more important things to focus on, understandably. But it's interesting, isn't it? And you can't make a direct comparison. I think it's always worth pointing this out. This is based on figures collated by a reader of the Times every year.
Yeah.
And is based on the court circular. Now, some royals' days of engagements don't look the same as other royals. And it's important to take that into consideration. It's not really a measure of who's working the hardest or who's doing the least, because they have quite different approaches. And there's a sort of generational thing going on there as well. So, for example, the Princess Royal, Princess Anne, will go all out and maybe carry out 5 or 6 engagements in a day, but she'll be sort of jumping in a helicopter, going and popping in here, popping there. And that's not to say that she's not engaged, because I've seen her in action and she is quite remarkably switched on. She knows exactly what's going on. She's done all the reading. She's thoroughly committed. But the younger generation, I would say, are much more interested in lasting impact. And if that means that they're having more meetings behind the scenes or working longer term on projects without as much sort of FaceTime, if you like, with the public, then that's what they're going to do. And so that's what you're seeing with Homewards. That's what you're seeing with Princess of Wales's Royal Foundation Centre for Early Childhood. There's a lot going on behind the scenes, so you can't really make a judgment on the basis of what appears in the court circular.
I actually did see Princess Anne once on the street, and she was on her official car, and she was reading notes ahead of going to an event. So
there we go.
She's hardworking. Now, I don't know what's going to happen in 2025, but I'm just going to say she'll top it again. I know.
I'd say it's a fair. It's been her or King Charles for however long records have existed, as far as I can tell.
Okay. Now with this, shall we welcome the lovely, lovely Hannah?
I think let's get her into the studio.
Let's do that.
Hannah, welcome back to the podcast. We're so happy that you've come back.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're delighted. It's a new year, a new start. Everyone's back to work. The King has been seen at Sandringham. He's going to be out and about next week. What else is happening at the moment?
Well, it's kicking back into action, isn't it? I think we got quite used to January feeling like time off.
We certainly did, yeah.
The royals do like to take some time off over Christmas. The King's been at Sandringham. We've seen him in church, haven't we? And he's done a couple of little engagements behind the scenes there. They've gone up to Scotland now, and I was expecting they were going to have a few weeks of just peace and quiet, but no, he's back on Monday.
He's not a man to have a break, is he, at any point?
No.
But he has got potentially a trip coming up in the very near future, and he's kicking off with an event on Monday to mark Holocaust Memorial Day, which is not happening till later in the month. But what do you make of this? He's really starting as he means to go on, isn't he?
Yeah, he is, and he's back in London. Whether that coincides with some cancer treatment, we obviously never get told. But this was going to be quite a moving event, actually. It's the Holocaust Memorial, as you say. They're having some Holocaust survivors along to the palace, and this really, really impressive project to try and bring the stories of Holocaust survivors to life. So the King is going to be shown a lot of new technology. of how they're going to bring this information to a new generation. And as you sort of hinted, it's leading up to this big Auschwitz memorial event, 80th anniversary of the liberation, which nobody has confirmed who is going yet. We're absolutely sure there's going to be a royal there. This is such an important event. And the British royal family are so entrenched in the Holocaust Memorial project. The king has been really personally involved in. He had those portraits done for the royal collection. And the Prince and Princess of Wales have done a lot of engagements with these very elderly now Holocaust survivors. So we're absolutely sure someone will go. The king will be there come hell or high water,
and it's
I'm quite sure.
Yeah, it's a really important one, isn't it? Because, sadly, much as we saw last year with the D-Day commemorations, for these veterans and survivors, this is probably the last big moment, big sort of milestone moment that many of them will attend. I think it's really interesting, isn't it, as well, because I remember going to Bergen-Belsen with the late Queen, that the royal family have taken this as a key thing that they want to encourage people to remember and pay tribute to.
And learn the lessons of.
Yeah, and there's a big message there, isn't there, at the moment when the world is becoming increasingly polarised again. But also it's a real testament to how the king appears to be doing. We know he's still undergoing treatment, but, all being well, if he's able to pop out to Poland in the next few weeks, that's a good sign.
Yeah, it is. And similarly to D-Day, it shows how important the event is, isn't it? And they're very open in the same way that they were with D-Day, that, as you say, this is going to be really, realistically, the last major anniversary that any of these survivors will be able to travel to in person, at least with the ability to still talk about it, do the media appearances that are important in shining a light on the issues. So let's see. We'll see if the palace confirm it, but Monday we'll get a little bit of a glimpse into how that might look.
And of course, William, we are expecting to see in the coming days as well. But we did have an unprecedented, I don't want to use that word too often, personal message for him to mark Kate's birthday. Now, tell me a little bit about that.
Well, it was unprecedented, but it has been sort of trailed over this year, hasn't it? So I wrote in the Telegraph this morning, this is realistically the complete end to the royal family stiff upper lip, if there ever was one nowadays. This was a really personal message that the Prince of Wales would normally share behind the scenes. It's a message to his wife, who he lives with, who he's probably having breakfast with, having done the school run, as this is posted on social media. So it's not that this is never said, it's just that he obviously decided this year that he wanted the world to hear it and hear how proud he is of her and how remarkable she's been. It said, "We love you," pay tribute to the strength she's shown this year. And obviously, this is a result of this very changed perspective that the Princess of Wales' illness has given everybody.
And we, the world, appreciate it, William. We do.
Especially you.
Well, we weren't expecting a photo. We've never really had photos on her birthday other than obviously her 40th.
No, it's a bit of a misconception, isn't it, I think, from royal watchers that birthdays bring photos. And really, that's only something that they've done with the children.
Yeah.
It hasn't been something that Kate and William and the other adults do generally, unless it's a 40th, but a bit of a landmark birthday. And it was a really unusual photo too, wasn't it?
I loved it. I love a Kate in jeans. I love how when she looks her most casual. I remember during COVID, there was a photo of her baking with her kids and she was just in her kitchen wearing jeans and then like a little shirt. And I just love that version of Kate. I think it just shows how normal, mumsy just she is. I don't see
but
her
also
as
very glamorous.
Also, obviously,
I look like that in
very
my
glamorous.
jeans.
And it felt different, didn't it? I think this year we've got very used to this outdoorsy, countryside,
nature
outdoors
loving.
playing with the children, nature loving. And this did feel different, this black
Yeah.
and white. It was casually dressed, but quite a formal portrait photo, even though she's smiling and looking off camera.
Well, the last black and white one was them in the Christmas card from 2024 or 2023, and it was just them as a family, black and white, very studio, but it was very different. It was more like a formal black and white. I felt like this one was very casual.
That one felt a little bit like business casual.
Yeah.
I think this one, and just thinking about it now, there were some echoes of a sort of Diana photo shoots. There was a little bit of that, but I thought she looked powerful in a way. Happy, like she has some agency. We had all that chat last year about where is she and what's she doing and is she being controlled and all that madness on social media. And I think I like seeing images like this because it she's obviously put all the thought into it and the direction, and it reminds you that, she's...
Yeah, and she really likes that sort of stuff, doesn't she? We know she's a very keen photographer herself, but she's also very interested in photography as an art form. And the idea that this photo shoot has taken place over the summer, which we didn't know about, alongside, it must have been at a similar time to that shot of her underneath the tree.
Yeah.
And both of them were done in Windsor. Matt Portis was there again. And it just gives this glimpse, doesn't it, into what might one day be this incredible, precious archive of photos of the Wales family, their children, that we know nothing about, but Kate is very carefully curating and compiling, either just for the family photo albums like the rest of us, but maybe some of this stuff we'll get to see one day.
Well, she's got one eye on the history books.
Yeah.
I think what I also found really interesting about it is the directness, and this is also speaks to the way that their communication has changed in recent years, and we have to really consider what happened with the Mother's Day photograph last year, really, and the fact that obviously was a really challenging moment for them. It's interesting, isn't it, that they have now really adopted a social media first policy.
They have, and they've very clearly embraced this speaking directly to the public. That has been a big change this year, and especially for people in our jobs where we're writing about the royal family quite a lot, it is so useful to hear directly from them. So you're not trying to read the rooms, you're not trying to talk to their friends and their press office and their staff to figure out what they're thinking and what's going on, when you've got them just telling the world all at the same time directly how they're feeling, what they're thinking and what's going on. It's very useful, and it is a real change, and I think that's something that they're getting much more comfortable with, actually, the necessity of communicating like this in a world of, like you said, Wild West social media.
Well, and we can get on to changes at Meta and Instagram shortly, but it is interesting, isn't it? Because there's no room then for misinterpretation, and people can't say, did they mean this or did they mean that? And I think that's helpful. I think you're absolutely right. Is this the way forward then for the monarchy?
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Certainly for the Wales family.
Yeah.
They have really leaned into, haven't they, this curating their image on social media. We had the video, which was so striking. And I think it gives this really unique, interesting glimpse into family life. The idea that the Prince of Wales is telling his wife that he loves her in public. I think a decade ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, it's just not something that would have happened in the royal family. And it's been trailed over this year. So it started, Kate sent a couple of messages earlier in the year for Father's Day and for William's birthday with very similar language. But I just think a future king saying it, signed W, which we all know is the shorthand from himself, it's a very small thing, but it's a very big thing in terms of the monarchy and how they're moving in the modern world.
And if you look at, I'm trying to think of a precedent now. I've said unprecedented. I think it came to mind the late Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh when she described him as quite simply my strength and my stay. But even that just felt so archaic, didn't it, compared to this, which just does feel very, very of its time.
And it's different, isn't it? Because when the late Queen mentioned that Prince Philip, it was so sparing.
Yes.
And so of its time, but it meant so much because it was so rare. This is something that they would do for a big wedding anniversary or, at the time of his death.
Yeah.
And it felt so important. And those little quotes we use endlessly, don't we? Because they're so few and far between. His strength and stay. It's in almost every piece you read about the Queen and Prince Philip.
Yeah.
It's got his strength and stay because it was such an unusual big statement at the time. So in a sense, that held so much power because it was so rare.
Yeah.
And if we're doing declarations of love on a regular basis, they become a lot more commonplace, don't they? But that's
and
the
they
world
lose their power, I guess.
It's not so much the power. I suppose it's the element of surprise or shock, or this is a big moment.
Yeah.
If we become used to hearing this much more affectionate language, and we've got the king hugging everybody in sight because he loves it, and these barriers are being broken down in a way that the royal family are happy with and the public seem to be happy with, we're moving with the times.
I love it. And it's in keeping as well with everything they've said about mental health and early childhood. It kind of is authentic to them, isn't it? It's not something I feel like they are putting on for.
No, exactly. It's how they live their lives in private and what they're telling their children endlessly about the importance of emotion and mental health and expressing yourselves. And yeah, why not lead by example?
Now, before we move on, this time last year, obviously, we knew something wasn't quite right because there wasn't engagements being announced. We knew, we were wondering what is happening, when are they coming back? Now, with this photo, what do we think that Kate's year is going to look like?
The year to come?
Yeah, the year to come for her.
Well, the phrase we keep hearing is this is the year of the gradual return, isn't it? There's no big reset button being pushed just because it's a new year. It's not new year, new you. It's not there's another birthday, so suddenly she's back in action. But the palace seem very, very hopeful that this will be a slow return. Probably not to a full programme, but certainly to seeing the princess out and about in a way we haven't really done this year.
Yeah.
The times we've seen her this year have been for these big state occasions or very carefully controlled engagements, like with bereaved families. You could see little bits of it, but it was quite carefully controlled. This year, I think we will see more ordinary engagements, the sorts of things that Emily and I attend, Royal Rota engagements. Sandringham, where we saw her do that really long extra walkabout with the public, having all these conversations. I think that took quite a few of us by surprise, that she was so well and able and willing to do it and looked so happy doing it, actually, speaking to the public again, which you probably would miss if that's something you're used to doing and suddenly you can't do it anymore. So I think we will see a little bit more of the princess in real life this year. We hope.
We hope. Now, going back to Sandringham, because we were just talking about that, how was that? Like, how did you see the royal family? Obviously, there were absences. We had Beatrice, who wasn't going to join, then she joined. What did you make of that day?
It felt quite a jolly day, really, didn't it? I love Sandringham because you can see the younger generations that you don't normally see, the non-working royals, as it were. And I love to see the cousins interacting, the Tyndalls and the Phillips girls, and how they clearly do have this lovely relationship with their cousins and their cousins-in-law and whatever relationship they all are between them. When you see the three Wales children, we see them a lot and they have these like semi-formal roles, even though they're children. But then when you see them with Mia Tyndall and Charlotte walking together, taking flowers together, it does make you realise that they have this whole inner life, having just a nice time being kids together behind the scenes. I personally loved seeing the dynamic between George, Charlotte and Louis, and the birth order, as with all children, is so interesting to watch, isn't it, of little Louis being offered chocolates and presents by the public, and he just about managed to get out a thank you before scuttling back to his dad, and George would step in and make small talk with these strangers in what must be really, let's face it, quite an odd situation for them.
Very unusual.
Odd situation for adults to have cameras in your face and people you don't know saying all lovely things. It's all very pleasant, but it is quite a
odd
thing to deal with when you're little. So I just thought it was nice to see everybody looking quite festive and quite happy and getting a bit of life back into what has been such a difficult year for them.
I loved
what
seeing.
I love about seeing, actually, is you just made me think of that, the young cousins together, is you can see how close William is to his cousins now. The relationship he has with Zara and Beatrice and Eugenie and Peter Phillips. And there's a real understanding on their part. You know, they don't have the pressures that he has, but they know what their world is like, and they fully understand it. And that's such an important thing to have, isn't it? That people who do get what your life is like, even if they're not fully part of it. And I think that will really stand the Wales children in good stead in future. You know, they're going to have these shared experiences with the cousins who will probably not have anywhere near the same sort of profile as them, but that's going to be a real support to them in years to come, I hope.
And it's people who get it, but also they are people who are the royals. They are also quite common sense, quite normal, quote unquote, people. So your Zara's, your Peter Phillips will be spending time with William in this very normal atmosphere, which brings both that support because they understand it, but also this foot in it's not that serious. don't get too much in your head about it, of just jollying along.
I think Mike Tyndall is a big factor
He's
in that, isn't he?
It's an asset.
Yeah. Look, going back to communications as well, the King's Christmas message this year was an interesting one, wasn't it? He perhaps didn't open up quite as much as some people had been expecting, but he did nevertheless obviously refer to his illness and Kate's. And this is something I think we're going to continue to see, I guess.
Yeah, it was very difficult in how to judge that sort of message, isn't it? Because effectively it is an address to the nation. People are sitting down at 3:00 in their houses after their Christmas lunch to hear this address. People, I think, wanted to hear about their personal situation, but equally, a lot of people in this country and around the Commonwealth would have had difficult years or years of their own. And it also can't just be about them. So it's quite a fine line to tread in getting it right. And I thought actually they did get it right by mentioning it, by making it a small paragraph in a big speech.
Yeah.
It would have been very odd to not acknowledge their personal circumstances at all. But as they've made very clear, they are people who have been on a cancer journey, and so many other people have been in the same situation and will be in the same situation, sadly. They have been really open talking about it, and that seems to be a conscious decision, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Of raising a bit of awareness, spotlighting any research that can be done. And it makes them a bit more human and a bit more relatable, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Now, speaking of communication...
Lots of communications.
There's a new Instagram account in town.
Is there?
Have you noticed? I think you should fill her in.
Well, I mean, I was following Megan already for many months because she obviously...
Waiting.
Yeah, well, she's had this Instagram account for over a year, I would say. And I remember an interview she gave early last year to The Cut. You know, part of the interview, she said, "Let me tell you a secret. I'm coming back on Instagram." So we thought she would get back to it sooner than she did, but it doesn't matter. We waited patiently. And then she launched it... was it the 1st of Jan or the 2nd?
It was the New Year's Day special.
Yes, it was New Year's Day, with a video of her just putting, 2025 on the sand. And that obviously grew. It went up to nearly 1 million, and now it's at 1.5 or 1.6. She shared 3 posts already. Obviously, you've seen them. The second one was the Netflix series launch, which actually did take me a bit by surprise. I knew it was coming out this year. I just didn't know how soon.
They've kept it under wraps, haven't they? They've done well.
I was very much told first quarter.
Yeah.
I didn't realise,
how soon?
First quarter, the first quarter.
Yeah, for her first 2 weeks. And then obviously the third post was a very loving post about her dog that sadly died during the Christmas holidays.
Now, you love a stat, don't you, Andrea?
I love a stat, yeah.
What do you make of the traffic?
I thought, I'm not going to be, I'm going to be honest, I thought it was going to grow quicker. I remember being around when Sussex Royal launched their first Instagram account, and that was wild. And it's still active, and it's still at 9 million.
Even though they haven't posted on it.
They haven't posted for 5 years. And I thought it would replicate. It hasn't yet. And then the videos have had great watches. Obviously, the first one was watched by nearly 10, but then it's gone down. Obviously, Netflix, I think, had 8 million. And her last one about Guy, her dog, had around 4 million. I mean, it's still great.
Told you she likes the stat.
Yeah, I like a stat. I do work for online, guys, so I do love a stat. But I mean, it's great. I love that she's back. I love that she is going to tell us more. And that Guy video says, it just confirms it. She's not going to be afraid of sharing photos of her personal life. She has included her kids in those videos. Maybe we haven't seen them face on, but we've seen them talk. We've heard them sing. And I just love that she gets to share that part of her life. And I for one, am following her. I will watch her series, so I welcome her.
I think everyone's going to have a watch, aren't they?
We're all going to have a watch.
It would be rude not to.
And I'm not particularly into food hosting. It's not my thing, but I'll still watch. I still enjoy it.
I have a theory that the children might appear.
Yeah.
I think even if it's just the back of their heads.
Do you think those ladybird canapes were a clue?
I mean, I think that's a very strong suggestion, but it's where she sits down on the grass and says, "Look what we made." And yeah, I think we might see the back of their little heads.
Well, her friend and guest, Mindy Kaling, has said that the show that they filmed, which actually 10 months ago. It just blows my mind that it was actually so long ago, because I thought it was all filmed in the last.
I didn't realise it was that long ago.
After the summer, yeah. She said they filmed it 10 months ago while she was on maternity leave at Minty, that is. And they filmed a kids' party, so it just makes sense.
I wonder who might turn up to that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I'm excited.
It's interesting, isn't it? But you've written about this week, and I loved your take on it. And that was about how should we react to this, or how should the royals react to it?
Well, my view is that this is a very, very harmless way of the Duchess of Sussex making money in their new lives. My view has always been that the happier, the more successful, the more peaceful Harry and Meghan are and feel, the easier everything will be on both sides of the pond. Yeah. If they can pay for their security, they can pay for the lifestyle they want to lead, the incentive to make money in different ways that are much more problematic for the royal family. So another book, another tell-all TV series, this whole series of interviews that we saw back in, was it 2022, which was just kind of relentless airing of their grievances about the royal family and their time in the institution. If that now comes to a close because Meghan is teaching us how to scatter petals on donuts and drizzle oil on hummus and chop up carrots, then
that's a good thing.
More power to them.
Yeah.
It's harmless.
And it's not new. We have to say, it's not new for Meghan to do this. She did this with her blog.
This was her life before.
This was her life before, and this is what she's passionate about. It makes sense. And actually, it would have made sense if she'd done it sooner rather than later, because this is what she's known for. She was known for her blog, travel, food, clothes. We know that whatever she wears sells out, so it just makes sense.
It's a very strange, when you take a step back, full circle moment, isn't it? It's extraordinary to think before she met Prince Harry, she had this successful blog, she interviewed chefs, I think she did recipes. Mm-hmm. This is the TIG was her baby. Then she met Prince Harry, married into the British royal family, travelled the Commonwealth, had a prince and a princess, left the royal family, and is now back where she was, except with this extra super duper on steroids platform that she now has on Netflix. It's really astonishing to think that the monarchy, her time in the royal family, effectively was a side hustle in hindsight, but has given her this amazing opportunity to go back to what she loved doing in the first place.
Yeah. And she seems happy. She looks happy in all of these things. And they are, I guess in many senses, they're moving forward. We know that Harry certainly is going to be at the Invictus Games next month, but he does also have some unfinished business back in the UK. So they are slightly diverging their paths, aren't they, professionally?
Absolutely. To coin an old royal phrase, on different paths. It used to be William and Harry, and now it's in a much less contentious sense.
Yeah.
Harry and Meghan, professionally, they do seem to be on very different paths, don't they? Meghan's life now is all about, as she says, creating joy, seems to be forward-looking, back communicating on social media, and Harry is forward-looking in terms of his Invictus Games, like you say, but yes, there is a lot of old business that he wants to be settled, and this year is going to be the year of court cases, isn't it?
Again.
Another year of court cases.
Again, obviously he's back. He's due to give evidence in February, we believe, late in February, in a case against News Group newspapers. Then his ongoing case with the Home Office is due, I think, in April. And then there's more coming down the line. This is something he's showing no signs of walking away from.
No, and it is something that needs resolving, isn't it? The security issue in particular. If you think Invictus Games is coming to the UK in a couple of years' time, the idea that he will still be fighting with the Home Office, who work under the name of the King, it's His Majesty's government, about this security issue is just going to be so complicated as the years go on. So I think everybody is keen to draw a line under it one way or another, and it is not something he is letting go.
Yeah, and also, that it goes without saying that he can't be here in a position to spend more time with his family if, at some point in the future that becomes something that he's able to do. Unless he does feel that he has that security. At least certainly that's his argument, isn't it?
That is his argument. And I think the other side of the argument is, of course, that they are generally always invited and you can stay at a palace and the thing about the security issue is that it's not that he has no security if he comes to the UK, is it? It's just this slightly nuanced situation where he needs to give 28 days warning so that the police can make arrangements for his security. If he's going to an event or any sort of public duty over here, he will get security. He's always, if he's at a royal event, he's always under the umbrella of royal security. If he's staying at Buckingham Palace, there's no safer place in the world, is there? So a lot of people would make that argument.
Yeah.
The argument that he makes, as I understand it, is that he wants a much more just set in stone, I can come and my entire family will have security under all circumstances.
Yeah.
And that is a much more complicated issue, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. If he's no longer based here and on the public payroll, if you like.
Yes, and obviously the argument is always taxpayer funded. Should the taxpayer be funding a trip to Whole Foods to have security, the Met Police, armed forces offering security in all circumstances? That is an issue for the court to hear, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we will be covering it, I'm sure. I want to go back to Meghan. I've got to ask you this, Han, because we discussed it last time you were here, but do you have any update on the jam situation?
No.
Let's move on.
I have not had my pot of jam in the post yet.
We are ready and waiting, Meghan, if you're listening.
She might launch her brand. Maybe once Netflix.
Well,
think
the
they have
idea
to come
now is
hand
that
in
it's
hand,
a tie-in, isn't it? Is that this stuff we see it on screen, and then Netflix somehow in business ways that are more complicated than I understand. Netflix do this quite often with series. They tie in commercial opportunities at the same time.
Yeah.
So the idea that on Wednesday people will tune in for 4 hours of seeing her creations. One imagines that jam will be in there somewhere, and maybe then something will pop up where you can buy it.
So now she'll have 2 Instagram accounts to take care of, not just the one.
Yeah, wow. I mean...
Well, the ARO, the American Riviera Orchard, is still having copyright issues, isn't it? So we'll wait and see whether that name continues or whether it needs to rebrand. With Love Meghan is the name of the show. Maybe that could be used.
Again, if you're listening, Meghan, Hannah's got a good idea for you. I want to go back to the communications point as well, though, because it seems to me, it's very interesting, I think, that she's back on Instagram. So many very high profile people are. I don't think you can argue with that in any sense. But it is something that Harry and Meghan have been very vociferous about, isn't it? Online safety. And, and something that's totally beyond her control. Mark Zuckerberg, owner of Meta, who owns Instagram, has just basically taken the brakes off on this platform, hasn't he? And said that they're going to get rid of fact checking. That's a tough one, isn't it, for the Sussexes?
It is difficult. So they very proactively briefed, didn't they, that they... have had conversations with Instagram and that the Duke and Duchess are confident that there are enough safeguards, or at least they're moving in the right direction, that they can make a positive contribution to that space. Meghan being on Instagram, she's turned her comments off, hasn't she?
Yep.
Which I think is a very sensible idea for all of us.
Yeah.
Not only that, though, she has put limits on her account where you can't check all the people that she follows or follow her.
You've done that, haven't you? You've tried.
I've tried. You can't check who likes her posts either. That's information that only she has. So I think she has taken the steps to stop maybe stories coming out where...
To protect.
Yeah, to protect her as well. Who follows her, who doesn't, or who liked it, who didn't. I think she has been very smart in that sense.
Oh, okay, interesting.
No, I know this because I tried to...
But then, of course, you're quite right. One of the big issues they've been talking about recently, especially last year, was online safety. And if you're becoming a very large account contributing to interest in social media, that is something you have to weigh up really carefully. Obviously, they're confident that and happy that that's something that they can make work and that isn't hypocritical. But I think it does open them up to some questions.
Yeah.
On the flip side of things, obviously, when they were in the royal family, the inability to communicate in a way that Meghan had been used to on Instagram was a big sticking point, wasn't it? They didn't like having to rely on a press office or an official communication. There was a lot of frustration over the limitations on what they could say and what they could clarify if they wanted to. And now they have the freedom to use Instagram to communicate as they wish. I think it will be interesting to see whether they stick to these very professional posts, updating them on their personal lives, or whether they also use it to communicate for work purposes, for commercial purposes, for answering things that they read about themselves that they say aren't true or they don't like. All options are open to them now. They're free people.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. Look, another thing that, again, is entirely beyond their control, and we've talked before about sometimes their timing appearing to be cursed, but we've very sadly had these awful wildfires in California, which are ongoing. And it goes without saying that if you are listening in California, we are sending
so much love.
Yeah, it's been very, very upsetting to watch. Now, they have put out an update on their website overnight, posting information about where people can seek support for all sorts of things, how you can help. And we understand they've also offered some shelter to friends who've had to evacuate. This obviously is not something anyone could have foreseen, but it is unfortunate timing, isn't it?
It's very unfortunate. And it follows this pattern of really uncomfortable timing of things totally outside their control. There is no blame placed on this whatsoever. But even when you think back to when they left the royal family, they left on this wave of momentum and sympathy and huge attention on them straight into the middle of a global pandemic.
Yes, where everyone had to go quiet.
When they had to go quiet, the launch of Archwell was completely stifled by the fact that everybody had to be at home. They were doing everything on Zoom. All of these philanthropic projects they kind of positioned themselves as doing really disappeared because everybody's lives changed so much. Then they had the big, these moments of Oprah when Prince Philip was in hospital, the memoir and Netflix when Queen Elizabeth II was very ill and died before this stuff happened. So many moments that they have wanted to launch or relaunch. Something in the world has happened. American Riviera Orchard, was that a couple of days before the Princess of Wales revealed she had cancer? So yes, Meghan has rejoined Instagram. You've got the fires, you've got that awful New Orleans terror attack where,
of course,
Prince Harry's beloved nanny's stepson was sadly killed. This is a really challenging time, but specifically in terms of the Los Angeles fires, this is probably something that they will want to communicate about. I would expect there will be a post at some point. So I don't think that timing-wise actually is really a challenge for them. That's an opportunity for them to be able to show what they're doing in a way that you can't really convey in sort of briefings that you've made a donation or a website which is giving resources. Like lots of celebrities have done this, haven't they, on their social media, have tried to direct the public to somewhere useful so that they can do something to help. So this actually, I think, would be, as odd as it is to say, a chance for them to show what Archwell is doing and what they are doing when the time feels right, which probably isn't right now in the heat of the moment.
Why she launched Instagram, because part of it was, she might want to post how to help. She might want to do more than just put a statement on the website. And I think that will be very good.
Yeah. But again, just, it goes without saying that you're launching a sort of glossy lifestyle brand. It feels like this is not the moment for it, but not, again, completely beyond their control. It's unfortunate. And we obviously hope that these fires are going to be contained as soon as possible. But it's been obviously devastating to watch. In terms of what else is coming up for them, Invictus, are you expecting there to be any other big trips?
Well, they're in quite a rhythm with it, aren't they? They obviously enjoy them. They obviously see the benefit in doing them. It's a bit of their royal life that they seem to be recapturing. These tours, the ones that we've seen so far, have been so similar to a royal tour, except cutting out the kind of boring diplomatic bits that the royals have to do. So they obviously really enjoy them. I would expect that they would want to do more. Do you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we'd all do with a trip, and to be honest. I know, just for anyone who's not in the absolutely freezing cold UK at the moment, we just had the coldest night of the year. I think we could all do with a bit of sunshine, couldn't we?
Bring back royal tours this year properly.
Well, and on that note, we know that the King and Queen are hoping to do some travelling in the coming months. Prince William is as well. What are you hearing about the Princess of Wales?
I think that she won't be going on these early spring tours. William will be doing them himself. It was already something that they were thinking about even before the illness, wasn't it, with Earthshot Prize, of they don't like being away from the children for long periods of time at the same time. And especially after a year where that family must have had so many difficult conversations, and it is so important to them to keep the children on track and keep their lives as stable as possible. They want to be there for the school run. So no, I don't expect to see the Princess of Wales overseas. in the near future, by which we're talking about the spring tour, aren't we? In the autumn, let's revisit it and see if she's able to do it.
Or we'll have you back. We'll have you back to find out. What are you most excited about for this royal year?
Oh, well, no royal editor is going to say anything other than the Princess of Wales, hopefully being out and about a little bit more, are they? I'm specifically looking forward to, and let's all touch some wood here because this is tempting fate so badly. But last year was so difficult and so sad, a lot of it actually, that I really hope this year is going to be the return of joy and life and tours and seeing people in real life connecting with the public again. That's what I'm hoping for.
Already it's looking like it's a year of, I would say, celebration. We've got, the Duchess of Edinburgh, who's turning 60. We've got Princess Charlotte, who's turning 10. Now, I'm just talking about the big birthdays. We've got Sir Timothy Lawrence, who's turning 70. Princess Anne is turning 75.
Princess Michael's 80.
Loves the stats.
Yes, I just feel like they're very big birthdays this year. And I think and I hope it's going to be a year of celebration for the royal family.
Yeah, we can't forget, there is health stuff going on in the background, isn't there? The King's cancer treatment is continuing. They're having to be very careful. They're not confirming anything very far ahead still.
No, keeping us on our toes.
Keeping us on our toes. And so there's always this in the background. But I think all of the stuff that has happened probably has made people appreciate what they can do when they do it. That was the lesson of last year, really, wasn't it? Is that when they were able to return to public life or these huge public moments, it felt so fresh and so celebratory to see people that hopefully we'll see a bit more of that this year.
Can I ask, is Prince George's big school year this year or is it the next?
Next year.
It's next. Okay, we're ahead of ourselves. Okay, good.
But they'll be doing school tours. This is a big decision, isn't it? Anybody
Sure
going
is.
into senior school, especially if you're the future king, and you have to think about security. You have to think about, do you want your children at the same school when there are a lot of same-sex big private schools around? There's so much to think about. The generational change of just send your kids to the nearest boarding school, which is Eton, is not really the way the Prince and Princess of Wales works. Not to say that they won't end up there, but there is a lot of thinking about school going on this year.
I mean, just putting this out there, I've just been through similar with my son, and not with quite the same options.
Or the budget.
But it feels like a lot of pressure, especially if it's your first child. You want to do the right thing, like any parent.
And you're making the decision for all of the children, effectively, aren't you? The decision is for the eldest child, but the others will be following. So
the impact of whatever you choose for your first is on the other children as well.
Especially if they're the future king.
Well, thankfully, I don't have this concern, which is probably a good thing for everyone. But Hannah, it's been a delight to have you back. We'd love to get you back again very soon and talk more. And I hope we'll get to go somewhere sunny very soon.
And then you can tell me all about it because I'll just be here waiting. And that's everything from us today. Thanks so much to Hannah, Emily, and to you two for joining us.
In the meantime, get more from Hello with our entertainment podcast, The Daily Lowdown, available on Spotify, Apple, and wherever you get your podcasts.
Bye.
Bye.